Welcome back to Reg Talk UK, the podcast that helps UK banking professionals stay sharp, stay informed, and stay ahead of regulation.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie.
So, have you been watching Wimbledon this week?
Yeah, a bit. Mostly just catching the highlights, to be honest.
Right. Well, you've probably noticed the electronic line calling. It's completely automated now. Machines are making all the split-second calls on the court.
Yeah, they got rid of the line judges entirely, didn't they?
They did. But, and this is the fascinating part, they added video review back in this year as a human check on the machine.
Oh, really? I actually missed that.
Yeah. And it perfectly captures this massive tension we have right now. We want the machine's speed, the absolute precision of it, but we still have this deep instinctual need for a human to be somewhere in the loop, just in case.
Right, which is a brilliant parallel, actually, to what we are diving into today, because the Financial Conduct Authority has just landed on that exact same underlying question this week.
The Mills Review.
Exactly. Published literally today, 6th of July, 2026. This is a monumental deep dive into the FCA's strategy for retail finance. Sheldon Mills led the review, and they are looking directly at the year 2030 and this massive shift toward Agentic finance.
Agentic finance, meaning AI that doesn't just calculate things for you, but actually takes autonomous action with your money.
Yes, moving money while you sleep. And if you think people are going to be too terrified to let a machine do that well, you'd be wrong. The Yonder consulting survey in these briefing docs found that 20% of UK adults are already willing to hand over their financial decisions to an autonomous agent.
That is an astonishing figure. That's 11 million people.
11 million UK adults ready to just hand over the keys to their savings.
It is huge. I mean, it highlights this absolute exhaustion consumers have with manual banking chores, doesn't it? Logging in, checking rates, trying to figure out compound interest.
Right. Nobody wants to do that.
Exactly. And the review breaks down exactly how this handover of control is going to happen. Sheldon Mills outlines this 5-level autonomy spectrum.
Which we really need to unpack, because it's not just a switch that gets flipped. How do we get from where we are today to an AI running our lives?
Well, level 1 is the baseline. The FCA calls it the operator phase. The AI is purely a tool. You ask it to summarize a mortgage term sheet, and it does it.
So just a glorified search engine. The human is entirely in the driver's seat.
Exactly. But then level 2 is collaborator. This is joint planning. You tell the AI, you want to clear your credit card debt, and it suggests a few strategies. You tweak the parameters together, and then you make the final call.
Okay, so the AI is helping build the architecture of the plan, but you're still highly active.
Right. But level 3 is where it gets serious. Consultant. The AI actively scours the market, monitors your spending, and recommends a specific action. You're no longer building the plan, you're just providing high-level guardrails.
And at level 4, it actually starts taking the initiative, doesn't it?
Spot on. Level 4 is approver. The AI queues up the fund transfer, it prepares the loan application, it does 99% of the work, and just waits for you to hit sign off.
It's like having a massively overqualified personal assistant.
Exactly. Which leads us to the ultimate goal, level 5, observer. The AI acts continuously, optimizing balances, moving money around entirely autonomously. You are completely removed from the immediate decision loop. You just review the logs later.
It's exactly like autonomous driving. We went from a paper map on the steering wheel to a GPS to lane assist, and level 5 is basically sitting in the backseat reading the Financial Times while the car drives you to Canary Wharf.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
But, and this is the massive question for risk teams listening today if we reach level 5, and the AI hallucinated a risk and lost me 10 grand. Who was actually responsible? There was no human operator.
Well, under the Senior Managers and Certification regime, the SM&CR, the liability absolutely does not transfer to the algorithm. You cannot put code in the dock.
Right, so the human manager is still on the hook.
Absolutely. The accountability just shifts from overseeing human staff to proving you built systemic safeguards for the AI. But we'll get into the whole compliance reshaping in a bit, because I think the more pressing issue right now is how on earth the FCA plans to regulate this.
Oh, this is the most contentious part of the whole review.
It really is, because the FCA has explicitly chosen not to write new AI rules.
None at all.
None. They are sticking firmly with the Consumer Duty and the Senior Managers regime, a completely judgment-led approach.
And quite frankly, I think that is a massive mistake.
Really? You don't think it's smart?
I think it's a gap large enough to drive a mis-selling scandal through, mate. Look at the Treasury Committee's response to this. They basically called it a wait-and-see approach, and they heavily criticized it.
But look at the pace of the tech. Over 20 frontier models were released just while this review is being drafted. If you write codified rules today, they're completely obsolete by next Tuesday.
But relying on principles like the Consumer Duty just leaves firms guessing. Contrast the FCA with what's happening in Europe, the EU AI Act.
Well, the EU AI Act is incredibly heavy-handed.
But it provides certainty. They have a hard deadline of August 2nd. They have massive crippling fines for non-compliance. They are categorizing AI systems by strict risk tiers. Firms know exactly where they stand.
Yeah, and they're going to completely stifle their fintech sector in the process. You can't innovate if you're terrified of crossing a vaguely defined technical threshold. The FCA's judgment-led approach is agile. It lets firms build the tech so long as the consumer outcome is good.
But how do you prove the outcome is good before it happens? Even the U.S. Federal Reserve, they explicitly excluded agentic AI from their recent guidance because it's too unpredictable.
Exactly. The Fed excluded it because you can't codify rules for something that adapts autonomously. The FCA is actually being realistic here.
I just don't buy it. If I'm a compliance officer and you tell me just make sure it acts in good faith, but my AI is executing 1,000 trades a second, I want hard rules. I want to know exactly what the speed limit is, not just be told to drive safely.
But drive safely is the only rule that scales when the cars are driving themselves.
We're going to have to agree to disagree on that one because I think the FCA is setting a trap for firms.
Well, we'll see who is right when the first major enforcement action drops.
Fair enough.
If you're finding this useful, don't forget to follow Reg Talk UK on Spotify or subscribe on YouTube. It really helps us reach more banking professionals like you.
Let's pivot back to the impact on the firms themselves, specifically regarding the SM&CR. You mentioned the liability doesn't transfer to the algorithm.
Right, it doesn't.
So what does that actually mean for the day-to-day role of a risk or compliance professional?
It's a quiet but total reshaping of the profession. Historically, compliance was about checking the work, right? A human underwriter makes a decision, and compliance audits the paperwork.
Yeah, a retrospective check.
Exactly. But with agentic AI at level 5, you can't check the work after the fact because the money's already moved at the speed of light. So the compliance role shifts from doing the checking to designing the guardrails.
Right. You have to prove the digital boundaries you set were legally sound before you turn the machine on.
Yes. The regulatory question becomes, did the system operate strictly within the legally verified parameters of the consumer's initial consent?
Which is incredibly complex. So why are firms even taking on this risk? If a liability is that intense, why push for AI agents at all?
Because the potential reward is staggering. The Mills review highlights the advice gap. 91% of UK consumers currently have no professional financial support. None.
91%. That is wild.
And there's a protection gap, too, where only 30% of people have income or life insurance. Plus, you've got 900,000 completely unbanked citizens in the UK.
So the argument is that AI could provide bespoke, hyper-personalized financial advice to those 91% for practically zero marginal cost.
Exactly.
Right.
It could close those gaps overnight. A machine doesn't need a salary. It can manage an overdraft strategy for a struggling single parent with the same vigilance it uses for a high net worth portfolio.
Okay, that's the utopian view. But the review also dives into the dark side of this. The deepfake and social engineering risks are terrifying.
The new era of fraud.
Yeah. If my voice assistant can move my money, then an attacker with a voice clone of me can also move my money. And they can do it in milliseconds.
Right, and traditional defenses are useless against that. A human compliance officer cannot spot a synthetic ID that was generated in a fraction of a second. You basically need an AI to fight the AI.
Which brings up the concept of correlated failures. This was deep in the briefing docs, and it really unsettled me.
The AI layer hurting risk.
Yes. If every wealth management firm starts licensing the same underlying frontier model from one of the big tech hyperscalers, what happens if that model has a glitch?
Then every AI agent at every firm reacts to the glitch at the exact same millisecond.
Right. If the model hallucinates a market crash, millions of agents could suddenly dump assets simultaneously. It's a recipe for an instant algorithmic bank run.
And that is exactly why the FCA is building their agentic supervisory model. They know they can't regulate this firm by firm anymore. They are deploying system-wide monitoring to catch those hurting behaviors before they crash the market.
Essentially, deploying the regulator's AI to police the bank's AIs. It's quite literally a Turing test for financial services.
It is. Which brings us perfectly to the central tension of this whole debate. I want to throw a hypothetical at you based on what we discussed earlier about heavy versus light touch regulation.
Okay, go for it.
Imagine we are in the year 2029. An AI agent goes rogue. It herds, it dumps assets, and a retail customer loses a massive chunk of their pension.
Right.
You are the senior manager on the hook. You are sitting in front of a panel at the Financial Ombudsman Service, the FOS.
Terrifying prospect, but go on.
Under a codified rules regime, like the EU AI Act, your defense is, we followed the rules, we ticked every compliance box on the technical checklist. But under the FCA's principles-based consumer duty, your defense has to be, we exercise reasonable judgment to ensure a good outcome, but an unforeseeable technical anomaly occurred.
Right.
Which is the stronger defense in front of that FOS panel.
Oh, that is the sharpest possible framing of this entire problem.
Right.
I mean, if I am sitting in front of the ombudsman, I desperately want to be able to say, we followed the codified rules. Because if the rule says I have to test the model for exactly 100 hours, and I tested it for 100 hours, I have a tangible shield.
But under the consumer duty, if the outcome for the retail customer is bad, it doesn't matter how many hours you tested it. The outcome was bad, therefore your judgment was flawed.
Exactly, which is why the FCA's approach is so terrifying. We exercise judgment sounds incredibly weak when a pensioner has lost their life savings. The FOS panel will just look at you and say, well, your judgment was wrong, pay the fine.
But the flip side is, if you rely on the we followed the rules defense, you are essentially saying it's the regulator's fault for writing bad rules. And regulators hate that.
Sure, they hate it. But it protects the firm. And that's what compliance teams care about. This shift from rules to judgment, especially with a technology as unpredictable as agentic AI, it basically transfers all the systemic risk directly onto the shoulders of the individual senior manager.
That is a very fair point. It requires a level of courage from risk professionals that we haven't really seen demanded before. You have to be comfortable operating in the gray.
And compliance officers famously love operating in the gray.
Absolutely. They're renowned for their love of ambiguity.
It's a massive cultural shift. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's summarize the key takeaways for the risk, strategy, and compliance teams listening on their Monday morning commute.
Well, the fundamental takeaway from Sheldon Mills is that this is not plateauing. The transition to level 5 autonomous agents is accelerating. You need to prepare your firm for a world of continuous delegated finance.
Right. Second takeaway. The FCA is not giving you a rule book. They are pointing to the Consumer Duty and the SM&CR and saying, you figure it out, just don't get it wrong.
Yeah.
So your risk frameworks need to shift from retrospective checking to proactive guardrail design immediately.
And third, keep an eye on the macroeconomic risks. AI on AI fraud, synthetic identities, and correlated herding behavior. The speed of the market is about to increase exponentially.
Absolutely. Now, before we sign off, there was one philosophical question raised in the original audio sources of this review that I really want to leave our listeners with today.
Oh, the provocation about responsibility.
Yes. We spent this entire time talking about the risks of handing over control to machines, the fear of what happens when the AI gets it wrong. But let's completely flip that perspective.
Right.
If we truly reach a point in 2030 where AI agents are demonstrably better, faster, and infinitely more rational at calculating compound interest and avoiding scams than any human being could ever be, will there come a day when the FCA actually considers it financially irresponsible to make your own money decisions?
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
If the machine can mathematically guarantee a more secure financial outcome, human intuition eventually transitions from being a safeguard into becoming a systemic liability.
It really does. Next time you log into your banking app to manually transfer funds, ask yourself how much longer you'll actually be allowed to be the one clicking that button.
That's all from us this week. Thanks for listening to Reg Talk UK. Until next time, stay sharp and stay compliant.